Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 25-8 Sportscast. I'm your host, Tommy Fink, and alongside me today, as always, is Jett Rosenstein. Jett, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tommy. Always happy to be with you for another episode of this great podcast, and I'm excited to get right to it.
Yeah, you sound really excited tonight, Jett. Couple things here. First of all, happy Easter, everybody, because that is the day that this episode will be coming out. So happy Easter to all who are listening.
Passover as well for
and
those who have been celebrating.
Yeah, happy Passover as well for those who've been celebrating. Best words said by Jett so far on this podcast. You may notice, for those of you watching at YouTube, I'm wearing an Arizona Diamondbacks hat. And you know what? I'll tell you exactly why. I'm not even going to add any suspense. They just came off of a great win, a great team win against a worse team. The Diamondbacks are finally hitting their stride. Second win of the year, they're getting hot. The New York Mets have fallen to the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I said we weren't going to talk about them for a while until they're at 50 losses. They're already halfway there, basically. So shout out to the Mets for, getting themselves back on the podcast, and go Diamondbacks. Go ahead, Jett.
What happened? No, what happened to not mentioning the Mets until they lost 50 games?
Well, since they're already halfway there, I thought it was fine. I mean, you wouldn't consider this to be about half?
Halfway to 50 losses or halfway to 50 games?
Losses.
I'm pretty sure they're at like 3 losses or something like that. So that would put them at 6. Halfway to 6.
You know what? You're right. Either way, they're getting close. I mean, it's inevitable anyways.
They'll be there. I mean, it's inevitable that they won't be at
by the All-Star break.
They won't be at the top of the division by All-Star break.
I mean, they haven't played a real team yet. Nationals, Phillies, Diamondbacks. Play a real team one time.
All right. Marlins are coming up, so that'll be a true test right there.
Marlins, that's going to be a true test. Maybe the Marlins can get to 500 by the time that series comes to be.
I mean, if we keep playing the Phillies, it's definitely going to increase our chances for sure. So
yeah, for sure. So enough baseball for the podcast. I mean, the main thing going on right now is the NBA playoffs, and we've gotten quite a few games under our belts now, and we are starting to see how teams look. First look at a lot of playoff teams for the first time, because like teams like the 76ers, this is a new look team. There's start with that game right there, Jett. Let's start with the play-in games that we haven't covered yet, actually. My mistake. So the play-in games that we have not covered yet include these right here. So first we talked, last time we talked, Jett, was what, Monday?
Yeah, but the last game we didn't finish talking about it wasn't a final yet. The Clippers-Timberwolves. The Timberwolves ended up winning that game 109-104, and now they're facing the Grizzlies, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah. So, just self-explanatory there. Timberwolves won the NBA Finals against the LA Clippers in the play-in tournament. Just ask anybody on that team. They'd basically vouch for it and say that they did just win the NBA Finals that game. So that was April 12th. That's the last time we talked. That game ended after we finished the recording. April 13th, we saw a few more playing games. Atlanta Hawks versus the Charlotte Hornets. Just as Jett and I both suspected, the Hawks took care of business fairly easily. And Pelicans over Spurs, we also both saw coming. April 14th, there was no NBA games. April 15th, Atlanta Hawks versus Cleveland Cavaliers. Another one we both saw coming. The Hawks came out on top as 6-point favorites. And then Pelicans over Clippers. This one, Jett, we didn't coming.
No, and a lot of it had to do with Paul George not being able to suit up for that one. The Clippers only lost by 4, so considering that, it was a lot closer than I think most people expected, even with the absence of Paul George. But I mean, the Pelicans, CJ McCollum led that team to victory, and now they get a chance to get in the big dance.
Yeah, and Reginald Jackson really played really well. Though all jokes aside, that was like an emergence game for him. That was a very good game. He tried to take over as best he could. You throw in a supporting cast, I think Kawhi, Paul George, and Reggie Jackson, all of a sudden that could be a big 3.
Yeah,
comparable.
Reginald definitely stepped up in this one. I don't know if that was really a joke. Didn't make sense because that's really his name. But
It's really his name.
Yeah, so I don't know what direction you're going with there. But anyways, yeah.
Let me just remind you guys before we move on. Jett is he is on Eastern time, so for him it is just getting to 10:30 now. And after that Clippers Pelicans game, we moved on to today's set of games, and today being Saturday, April 16th.
Excited to talk about these for a multitude of reasons.
I am as well. Let's first go ahead and start with, let's just go in order. Jazz Mavericks. I picked the Mavericks to win this series. I think that this makes a better case for them to win the series, honestly. You know, you look at this game, and if you really want to break it down, Jett, Rudy Gobert is 0 for 1 from the field. I mentioned that could be a problem. I mean, this is supposed to be a high-scoring offense, 99 at full strength. Donovan Mitchell, 10 for 29 from the field. Bojan Bogdanovic, 11 for 20, and Mike Conley, 6 for 12. No one else on this team got up more than 7 shots. And these guys really, for some reason, think that they want to run a 3-hitter, and I don't think Bogdanovic and Mike Conley are the two other guys to complement Spida. I think that if they don't include Rudy Gobert, they need to include their big man, who is actually a good scorer if used properly. I think they need to include Gobert. And like I said earlier, the Dallas Mavericks lost by 6 points without their best player. Jett, I think adding Luka Doncic to this lineup easily, and they're away, don't forget, very easily makes a 6-point swing in this game.
I disagree. I think the game plan's a lot different, obviously, when you have Luka on that court. And I feel like with Luka on that court, I think the game plan changes not only for the offense and obviously the defense, but I think Rudy Gobert is going to be much more involved going forward. You can't just have Spida and Bogdanovic just jacking up shots left and right, because eventually that is going to come and get them when all is said and done. So I think this was an outlier performance as far as shooting for Rudy Gobert in this performance. I think he's going to be much more involved as the series goes on. We'll see when Luka returns in this series. Obviously, that's going to be a big factor. I still like the Jazz to come out on top with this series just because they're the better team overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, obviously, game plan is going to be different, but I don't think that changes the fact losing by 6 on the road without your best player. I mean, 6 is literally 2 shots away.
This game was in Dallas.
This game was in Dallas. I don't know. Either way, I don't think that changes anything because, 6 points with the best player on the court, Jett. Think of all these other teams that if Joel Embiid misses a game for the Sixers in the playoffs, they're losing by a heck of a lot more than 6 points. Same for whoever you want to consider the Heat's best player. I think it's Tyler Hero, to be honest with you. If Hero's not, you guys are losing by more than 6. Jokic, they lose by more than 6. Any other huge name that basically carries a team more than 6. It'll be interesting to see. I thought you were going to be on the same page with me here after this game. Clearly not. Moving on, though, Timberwolves Grizzlies. This one was surprising. I mean, obviously, yeah, it's one game, but Timberwolves won, and they won convincingly. I mean, Jett, is this something that you're expecting to see? I mean, I thought that the Timberwolves were going to win a game in this series, obviously. I didn't think they'd win one by 15 plus.
Yeah, this was very shocking. Obviously, it's a best-of-7 series, so there's still plenty of time to be made up for the Grizzlies in the series, and I still expect them to win. But obviously, the Timberwolves winning that play-in game, obviously it wasn't an NBA Finals game to them because the next game they come back just as strong, if not stronger, and put a dominating performance together, really led by Anthony Edwards, who put up 36 points, along with Karl Anthony Towns, who put up 29. outstanding for both of them. And even John Morant, the Grizzlies, he still had a really good game, but overall this team just cannot get it together. And this is where that inexperience in the playoffs could come up and get them, in these types of games. Obviously the Timberwolves don't have a lot of experience either, but this series is looking a lot tougher than for the Grizzlies than maybe we initially expected.
Yeah, I agree with you on everything you said there. And like you mentioned, Cat and Edwards, they played unbelievably well. And that's something that you expect. And I thought that the Grizzlies were just going to be able to outscore those two. And, you look over at the Grizzlies side of the ball, and then you start to wonder, maybe they lost by 13 because Steven Adams just ran around the court for 24 minutes. 24 minutes, 0 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and a turnover. I mean, he did nothing to help this team. I don't think we see a performance like that again this series. Now, does that change an outcome so drastic as a 13-point outcome? I don't know. But I think it's pretty safe to say we won't see another performance like that from him.
Yeah, and what's remarkable is that the Timberwolves were able to steal a game on the road, and that's going to be key because obviously there's one more in Memphis and then two in Minnesota. So, big step in the right direction. And history says that a lot of the times the team that wins the first game in a series ends up coming out on top. I don't know the exact numbers over the course of the NBA playoff history, but it's definitely a positive step in the right direction that we could be seeing one of the biggest upsets of these playoffs.
Yeah, and it's one that I don't hope to see because I don't think the Timberwolves would fare very well against any second-round team. But then again, I didn't think they'd fare well against the Grizzlies either. Moving on to Game 3 of the day, the 6 o'clock start time, Toronto Raptors at the Philadelphia 76ers, and this one kind of looked exactly how I thought it would, other than the fact of who really went off. And I think that this is a great sign for Philadelphia 76ers fans like myself. Joel Embiid dropped 19 points, yet the team put up 131 and beat the Toronto Raptors by 20 at home. Tyrese Maxey went absolutely unbelievable. 14 to 21, 30 assists. James Harden dropped 22. Tobias Harris dropped 26. To watch Tobias Harris put up these type of numbers in the playoffs, this could be a game changer because that's not something we really accounted for. We didn't think that Tobias Harris was going to be a playoff, like a big playoff factor. And if he is, that could change the whole outcome of the Eastern Conference. And I don't know if you agree with me on something like that, Jet. But, you look at this team and just looking at the shots compared to what we talked about earlier with the Jazz, everybody on this team is putting up a good amount of shots if they're starting. Obviously, Danny Green just sits in the corner and waits for the ball to fall in his hands, so not him. Matisse Thybulle, which I found interesting, didn't even start at home, so maybe they just want to game plan and be prepared for when he can't play in Toronto. Other than that, what did you see in this game, Jet?
Yeah, the Raptors really looked overmatched in this one. Obviously, the Sixers were having their way on both sides of the ball, especially on the offensive end. Tyrese Maxey being the leading scorer. Joel Embiid didn't even need to do everything he normally does in order for this team to win, which is kind of telling on what we should expect from this team going forward. I could really see the Raptors getting swept now. Obviously, we've seen what it's like with Thybulle playing less minutes than he normally does. So if this continues, it's not really looking good for the Raptors. However, my biggest concern, you look at the minutes played for the 76ers and you see that the minutes heavily skewed to the starters in this lineup and the minutes heavily undermined when you're looking at the numbers in the bench. And that could end up catching up to the 76ers team because you could see the 76ers wearing out these starters, Harden, Embiid, Maxey, and with the little bench depth that the 76ers have, if they don't have, guys that they can turn to give some of these starters some time off, it's not going to bode well for long-term success in these playoffs.
Yeah, that's something I was actually just going to bring up right before you did. but you got to it first. And I'll go ahead and read off the numbers because you didn't get that deep into it. Embiid and Harris both played 37. Maxey played 38. James Harden played 40. Top minutes on the bench was Matisse Thybulle with 18. George Niang 16. Shake Milton with 14. Everybody else under 10 minutes, except for Danny Green, who started. He got 22. And when I say everybody else under 10 minutes, only 2 other guys played. So, I mean, they too many guys into the game here.
Yeah, you could even take out Korkmaz and Joe because they barely were even in 2 and 3 minutes respectively. Yeah. So
2 and 1 minute.
Yeah,
which is, I mean, they didn't really play at all. I was surprised because the Sixers were up 20 plus from like 10 minutes in the third quarter on for the rest of the game. I really thought that with like 7 minutes left in the fourth, they'd pull starters. They didn't do that. I think that we should have let our starters get some rest because first, guys get some playoff experience with no pressure on, and secondly, to obviously rest the guys that we're going to need deeper in this run. That's about all we got there. I think the Sixers. I have the Sixers in 5 now. I originally had them in 7. I think the Sixers are going to be able to take care of business pretty easily.
I have the Sixers in 4, sweeping the series.
Really?
Yeah.
I just think I think they'll win one at home. But either way,
yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously, we'll see if this is a foreshadow of what's to come because obviously it doesn't look great for the Raptors. Obviously, they could definitely squeak out a game, but we usually see sweeps more often in the first round, and based off of some of the other series, I think this could be the one that we see a sweep in.
We both originally had it going 7, correct?
I believe I had it 6 or 7, but yeah, I had it going deep into the first round.
So, yeah, the Sixers and Raptors both played. Sixers better and Raptors not as well as we thought they would. But who knows? Maybe it's just one game. Sixers played well, and that's that. Moving on to the last game of the night, Denver Nuggets at Golden State Warriors. And I have the Nuggets winning this series. I still have the Nuggets winning this series. But there's quite a bit to look at. Jordan Poole, I think he's for real. I think that we could see Klay Thompson get shipped off here pretty soon in the offseason because they want Jordan Poole to play. And they think he could be the next Klay Thompson in Klay Thompson's prime. And that's, I think, the same kind of thing. Andrew Wiggins looks like he may have been a fraud this year. And Golden State win 123-107 without Steph, which is big. Without Steph. Without Steph. He didn't start.
Yeah, he played.
He didn't play a lot of minutes, but I mean, not a huge impact of him anyway. Not like the real. We didn't see playoff Steph Curry this game, basically. Over on the Nuggets side of the ball, Jokic dropped 25. Will Barton dropped 24 in 35 minutes. I don't know. I'm sticking to my original gut pick because I still think it's possible. But Golden State outperformed how I thought they would today.
Yeah, I mean, now that Golden State is pretty much back to full strength, obviously Steph most likely will be starting one of the next 2 games in this series, and that's huge for them because they were able to win with him playing limited minutes, and a lot of that obviously has to do with Jordan Poole playing to the level he played at in this game. Draymond Green is back and healthy. Klay Thompson had a very good game, 19 points, 5 from 10 from 3. I still expect the Warriors to win this series. When I'm just looking at this Nuggets roster, you got Jokic, you got Barton, you got Aaron Gordon, and all these injuries have caught up to them. You don't see Michael Porter, you don't see Jamal Murray, and that's going to come up to bite them in the end of things because Jokic can only do so much, and the Warriors just have a much deeper team, in my opinion, and hence why they are the number 3 seed in the Western Conference.
Yeah, we also saw a Draymond Green 3-point and free throw today. So that's a little bit of interesting news. Golden State made a better case in my eyes today for winning this series, and obviously Vegas thinks that they should win this series. I just have faith in Denver. I don't know why I have that same gut feeling I had when I read predictions. But let's go ahead and move on to tomorrow's slate, Jed. Let's preview the Easter games that we will be seeing. So we have Hawks Heat, Nets Celtics, Bulls, Bucks, and Pelicans, Suns. Let's just go ahead and go in order again.
A lot of good games again.
Yeah. A lot of good games. Let's preview Hawks and Heat. Jet, I think Atlanta takes game 1 of the series. I really do.
Oh my god.
Trae Young is averaging 28.5 this season. I would love to see him drop 50. And I think Trae Young does drop 50 in this game. I'm calling it now. It's a bold prediction. Is dropping 50 points in game 1 of this Hawks Heat series.
I don't know what you're thinking. I think you've been watching too much ESPN lately. I know you say you don't do a lot of it, but clearly you're on the same page as what ESPN has been saying, that the Hawks are the biggest threat to the Heat and they're going to somehow come away with this series, blah, 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 all that good stuff, which is totally fine. Obviously, when you look at Trae Young on this Hawks, he has the ability to take over and lead a team extremely far, but this isn't any team. I'm going to read some stats off in a bit, but I think the Heat are going to be able to take care of. Obviously, they're not going to be able to total limit Trae Young just because of how explosive he is. You know, a top 15 player wouldn't go anywhere above that. Going into the top 6 is pushing it, but I do expect the Heat to win this game. Obviously, I would prefer the Cavaliers in this matchup. The Hawks are a bigger threat to potentially knock off the Heat, but I still expect the Heat to win this series handily. But one stat that I wanted to bring up, in games that the Heat have played the Hawks in over the course of the season so far, when we've seen backup point guard Gabe Vincent guarding Trae Young, he has done a great job of defending him, and he has held him to 16% from the field when that matchup is in play. And obviously, many people out there may not be that familiar with Gabe Vincent, but he has really come out strong this season from both offensively and defensive side of things. And that is very telling of just how deep this Miami Heat team is. I think they're going to put a nice game plan together to stop Trae Young and this Hawks offense. And obviously, it's a big thing also that John Collins, who was a little banged up, he's expected to play, but that is something notable to look out for, as well as Clint Capella. His status is still up in the air, I believe, for the game as well. I do expect the Heat to win this series. I'm going to say they win it in 5.
Okay. Yeah, based on that super detailed response, if I didn't know you, I'd say, wow, this guy's a Miami Heat fan. Good thing I do know you, though, and that's not true. I don't know. I think 5 games is very biased, Jet.
Biased. It's like a typical 1 versus 8 matchup. The Heat are the Heat. You act like the Heat aren't a number 1 seed. They're a number 1 seed for a reason.
They are the number 1 seed, Jet. But you act like basically the same exact Atlanta Hawks team wasn't just in the Eastern Conference Finals.
But this is also the same exact Atlanta Hawks team that has been underperforming all season long, and they got into the play.
What seed were they last year again?
What?
What seed were they last year again?
They were in the 4-5 match. I think they were 4 or 5. So
okay,
yeah.
Then they still made it to the East.
They totally underperformed. Their defense took a major step back. Their offense was just as good, but we're talking about this Hawks team potentially upsetting a number 1 seed, and they're worse than they were last year.
Markieff Morris is a game time decision in this matchup. So is Gabe Vincent. So is Tyler Hero. So is PJ Tucker, and so is Dwayne Dedmon.
They're all going to play.
Atlanta Hawks injuries. Clint Capella's out. John Collins is a game-time decision, and Lou Williams, he's out with a blown back. Moving on to the Brooklyn Nets, or the Brooklyn Nets at the Boston Celtics, the 3:30 p.m. tip-off. Jed, I'm gonna let you start off. What are you looking for in this game, and what do you expect to see?
Yeah, I'm really obviously, other than the Heat game, this is the other one I'm really looking forward to seeing. I expect this to be a very entertaining matchup. Obviously, if you heard on the last episode, I do have the Celtics winning the series. Tommy has the Nets winning this series, but it's gonna be very interesting to see how this Nets team takes on a Celtics team that's been very hot down the stretch. And obviously the Celtics are the number 2 seed, and they, deserve that with the play that we've seen from them down the stretch. I think the Celtics win this game. It's definitely going to be a tight series, I think, all throughout, but I think the Celtics are going to be able to find a way to neutralize KD and Kyrie, especially with their defensive prowess that we've seen through the latter of the season.
Yeah, I think the Celtics win the first 3 games of the series, and I think Ben Simmons comes back game 4, and the rest is history. Brooklyn Nets, Milwaukee Bucks in round 2. What do you think?
That's an interesting take. I thought we talked about not really getting any more clickbait on this show, but
I don't think it's clickbait, Jet, when we're multiple minutes into the show.
I don't know.
Unless you decide to turn this into our Instagram clip, then it's not clickbait.
I mean, we'll see what the timestamps have to say about that, because obviously that can have a lot to do with how people get to this part of the show. But interesting.
No,
for someone, for someone saying that the Nets are going to win this series, that you're walking on thin ice with that prediction there, saying that they're going to be able to come back from down 3-0.
I don't think Ben Simmons misses a 3-point shot this whole, to be honest with you.
So like 1 for 1 or
0 for 0. If he does take one, maybe he misses one. Who knows? No, it's hard to predict a game like this because they're both very evenly matched teams. I will say I hope the Celtics win, just in case we do see if the Sixers make the Eastern Conference Finals and it's either of these teams, I'd rather face the Celtics than the Nets, just because I feel like James Harden is going to suck against Brooklyn. I don't know why. It's just a weird feeling that I have. And I think that he would suck all series.
Well,
but
I mean, you're overlooking every match before that, so you know what happens.
I said if we potentially do see.
No, I'm just saying, like when you start thinking ahead and not focusing on the now, you really start to go under hot water. And all right,
Jet, let's go ahead and focus on the now. Let's go ahead and focus on the now, Jet. The game time decision. There's a real chance Trae Young doesn't get locked up by, for some reason, Miami Heat fans' Lord and Savior, Gabe Vincent. I'm tired of talking about that trash team from South Beach. Chicago Bulls, Milwaukee Bucks. That's the 6:30 That's the 6:30 p.m. matchup of the day. Milwaukee Bucks are 10-point favorites in this one. And from a 3-6 matchup, that's a lot of points. And that's 100% because the Bulls fall off towards the end of the season. Big Sexy, I understand this isn't what you want to hear, but Milwaukee Bucks are going to win this series in 5 games. And I could see Chicago potentially scoring under 100 points every single game of this series against Brook Lopez and Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling Big Sexy all along that the Bulls were going to fall off, and look what happened. They did. I hate, tooting my own horn, but I just had to, just because of all.
I think anyone that listens to this episode, this series in general, just thinks that you love tooting your own horn. I have to say.
No, I'm just stating the facts.
Go ahead with your analysis.
I'm just I want to tell people what I've been saying all along, and that's the incorrect stuff and the correct stuff, and I'm very very revealing in regards to that. But the Bucks are going to win this series still. I don't think anything has changed in regards to that, and them being favored by 10 points, like Tommy said, it's just very telling just how they flopped down the stretch. And yeah, DeMar DeRozan has, led this team, and he should definitely be considered in the MVP conversation just because of how valuable he is to this team. But the Bulls are just not there yet. I think they're going to continue to grow as a franchise as they continue to add more talent. But they have an extremely tough draw with the Bucks, the defending champions.
Perfect way to say it. Extremely tough draw. And just to point out how 10 points is a large spread, the Phoenix Suns are only favored by 10.5 against the Pelicans, and that's the 1-8 matchup. And this is no ordinary 1-8. This is really like the best team in the NBA versus the 10 or the 9. But yeah, like a half-point difference between and a 3-6 matchup. That's a lot. That's a huge difference. And self-explanatory here again. I think Phoenix Suns in 5 or less. I think we could very easily see a sweep here. Devin Booker is going to go off. Chris Paul is going to facilitate this whole entire offense and defense, and play as the captain that he is. And Jet, do you think we potentially see Zion Williamson in Game 1 of this series?
It's a tough decision for Willie Green, head coach of the Pelicans, to have to make. I know there's been a lot of issues back and forth between Zion and the Pelicans coaching staff, which includes head coach Willie Green. They've been going back and forth on what the severity of his injury really is. Zion thinks one thing, Willie Green. I can't say it. I can't.
What Jet means to say here is that Willie Green thinks another. What's happening right now is Jet is
no
all but dying of laughter because I accidentally said Alvin Gentry instead of Willie Green on the first cut of this, and he thinks it's the funniest thing to ever happen. I'm not too sure why. I'm sure I'll say Brian Flores when referencing the Miami Dolphins next season. It's just what happens, guys. Either way, I do think we see Zion in this series, and I think that Willie Green will drop a bomb on the NBA world, and it's going to be a fun storyline for this NBA season. But for this one, I still think that we see the Phoenix Suns with Zion back. I'd say Phoenix Suns in 5 or 6. Without Zion in 5 or less, I don't think it makes enough of a difference to push the game to 7, and definitely not to win the series. But Zion coming back could be interesting, and if they steal one Game 1 without Zion, I think we could very easily see Zion in Games 2 and so on because of a glimmer of hope.
Yeah. In all seriousness, Tommy, I do think we see Zion return in this series. It's
who's gonna write the lineup card, Jet? Who's gonna make sure that Zion plays? Who's gonna bring that true?
Obviously Willie Green.
Obviously.
But you will.
Yeah, this is awful. For those of you watching on YouTube, I really do apologize. We now know that Jet is one of those people with a very gummy smile. But guys, it is time for our word of the day. But guess what? In light of this current NBA playoffs, we are going to do a sports quote of the day. Jet.
Okay. I like it.
An athlete cannot run with money in his pockets. He must run with hope in his heart and dreams in his head. Unfortunately, Jimmy Butler, all he runs with is money in his pockets. All he wants to do is go for the biggest money possible, hopping from team to team to fill his closet with jersey from every single NBA team. And, I'm not too sure. I don't know the stats, but I'd say he has at least 25 different teams under his belt, guys. At least 25. We could see this guy playing for the Oakland Athletics with Kyler Murray pretty soon. But yeah, he's doing whatever he can for the money in his pocket. He must run with hope in his heart and dreams in his head. Clearly, Jimmy Butler, he's been in the league for, 8 painstaking years. He's got no hope and dreams left. I mean, they've been shattered every single year in the playoffs, time and time again. And guess what, Jet? He's never gotten it done. I mean, this is basically like a Josh Allen. Gets to the playoffs every single year, but he just can't seem to get it. I know he's much younger, and it's a much different scenario. Because in the NFL, you can't just team hop until you get the 5 best players in the league. But Jet, what do you think of this? Jimmy Butler. Let me rephrase using Jimmy Butler's life here. An athlete cannot run with money in his pockets. He must run with hope in his heart and dreams in his head. Jimmy Butler cannot take the highest paying job every single year. He must go for the win, and he must do it sparingly. What do you think, Jet?
Well, let me go back to your statement on Jimmy Butler hopping from team to team and talking about how that's a poor look on him. I'll bring up one name, Shaquille O'Neal. he has a jersey of every color in the rainbow in his closet, and he was very successful throughout his NBA career. And he hopped from team to team, and he won numerous championships with numerous different teams. And obviously, Jimmy Butler hasn't done that yet, but he's about to start that process very soon after he gets a ring on his finger.
Well, Jet, do you realize that Shaquille O'Neal was constantly a top 10 player in the NBA?
And Jimmy Butler's a top 15 player in the NBA.
Maybe every few years he gets up to that category.
Every year.
But Shaquille O'Neal was consistently top 10. Honestly, he had a case for top 5 every single year in the league. He's going down as a top 10 player of all time. So obviously him and Jimmy Butler are very, very different sides of the spectrum here.
No, but I mean, you brought up that little argument about, different jerseys and trying to become the highest played player on every team. And I was just kind of disputing that, just like all your other word of the day arguments. It's pretty blasphemous at this point in the show.
That's the word we're gonna use right now. Episode 20.
Not to take a page out of the book for my colleague and role model Stephen A. Smith, but yeah, it's really getting old at this point, Tommy. I mean, I get it. I get what you're trying to do, trying to create more clickbait, as we touched on earlier on the show. But it's really hard to follow these words of the days when they're polluted. Look that word up with inaccurate information.
Oh, Jet, I know polluted the word all too well. We look all over the Dallas Cowboys secondary. It's polluted with criminals. We look all over the Miami Dolphins coaching jobs. It's polluted with controversy. We look all over the Miami Heat roster. It's polluted with has-beens. We look all over the Miami Marlins roster. It's polluted with mid to trash level players. We look all over Derek Jeter's resume. It's polluted with getting rid of the fish tanks behind home plate. Let's get rid of the fish tanks in the statue. Let's just turn it into a boring stadium that's 500 feet to left, center, and right. I think we could talk about polluted players, polluted minds, polluted areas of expertise all day long, Jet. I'll leave it off with this. The New York Mets will not be a first, second, or third place team in the National League East in 2022. And the Miami Marlins will not be first, second, third, or fourth. I think the Washington Nationals have an emergence this season. Thanks, everybody, so much for listening. Have a happy Easter. If you're taking time out of your day to listen to us on Easter, we really do appreciate it. And that means you guys enjoy listening to us a lot. And it means a lot to us. We really do and thoroughly enjoy, and we get excited to come on and record this podcast for you guys. I'm speaking for myself here. I don't know about Jet, but I really do thoroughly enjoy coming on here each and every time I do. And I hope it shows, through our podcast. I hope they get better every single time we move on. But thank you guys so much for listening. Jet seconds it. He's a man of many words, especially as we get into 10:55 here on the Eastern Coast. But thanks everybody for listening. I'll reiterate it once more. It really means a lot to us. I'm Tommy. This is Jet, and that was the 25-8 Sportscast. Happy Easter, everyone.
Passover.